What is up, y'all? It's your boy Grant here with the Groovy Files. We are back with the first episode of the year. And why not start off the first episode of the year with my two very loyal co hosts, Jay Trent
What's good?
and Paragon Don.
What's going on?
And first, today, I wanted to kind of talk about, we're going to be talking about two topics, but first topic, I want to talk about excluding what his comments on the Canadian rapper, I would like to talk about Most Def and the label of conscious rap. So first off, when we think of conscious rap, I don't I have growing up I have like I was indifferent on the term, but now kind of like I really don't like it because every time people call somebody conscious rap, that their quote unquote definition and what that rapper actually is do not blend. Like, for example, I think Most Def is an amazing rapper, but I don't view a lot of stuff as conscious rap because these rappers show that they are just like everybody else. And that's, I mean, like, for example, like when people call, like, I feel like it's a style thing. Like when people hear, like, oh, he rapping over Jay Dilla, he rapping over Madlib, he rapping over all these other like specific producers. Meanwhile, they talking they talking about something completely normal. Like they talking about like Miss Most Def has a song called Miss Fat Booty.
Okay, I was
Like
gonna mention that song. I was gonna mention that too. So, but yeah, that was the first song that came to mind. Which, ironically, the TikTok challenge with the JID song that samples the. Anyway, you know what I'm getting at. Go
what do you
ahead. Go
mean,
ahead.
Jay?
Nah, it's like I feel like, especially now, because people use conscious as like a negative connotation, and it's just like, are we not all like we should all be conscious to an extent. Like, obviously, um rappers want to make songs about a variety of topics. So so because I make a song about an issue that I see in my community, or an issue that people that look like me face, does that make me a conscious rapper? Does that mean I have to talk about this all the time? Also, the fact that you mentioned Jay Dilla is funny to me because
He was the he exact opposite,
have y'all listened to
bro.
the
I have,
songs over Jay Dilla beats?
bro. I
Like,
have,
what is
dog.
conscious? Like, what is conscious? Is it
This is,
conscious because it's got? Is it conscious because they sample an old drum break? Like, is that what makes it conscious?
bro. No,
Because what are we talking about?
bro. Niggas speaking, niggas. I've heard niggas say Slum Village is conscious rap before, nigga. Their most popular song is them talk about women and like being in the club and shit.
Man,
Like
Slum Village might have the horniest album of all time.
like bro,
Them niggas are not conscious in the
they
slightest.
made a song called fucking Climax. What?
Bro, it was certain points in Fantastic Volume One where I was like, bro, I cannot wait till this album's over. This shit was just a lot. I was like,
I ain't gonna even
That's
I,
so. That's
I ain't
Fantastic
so.
gonna even
Volume
count,
Two,
bro. I
Fantastic
ain't gonna
Volume
even
Two was
count.
crazy.
I ain't gonna even count. I wasn't even that bad. It wasn't even that bad for me because I was really locked into them fucking beats. I was like, man, this is so pleasing, but these niggas
Bro,
talking
them
about
beats
fucking
were
in the
so
background.
crazy. And then they would just get on there being so horny. I'm like, bro, what's going on? What are y'all in the studio doing? But yeah, conscious rap is a funny label because like I think it's funny how when hip hop started, everyone was technically conscious because hip hop was you were rapping about the shit that was going on in your community. And I mean that's kind of what like the message was, and like that was the first like big rap song because it's like niggas is rapping about niggas being broke and like being poor and all this other stuff. And it's like eventually more and more people started rapping about like luxury lifestyles and like alternative things. Like, but all rap was kind of conscious at a certain point, and like now it's used as something that's like, well, I ain't trying to listen to that because that's conscious rap, and I ain't trying to hear that all the time. And it's like, I kind of get it, and I love fun rap, like, and but I also ain't trying to hear that all the time either. It's like it has to be some type of balance,
There,
and
there's a place for all of these things in hip hop, and I think people like act like there isn't. Like for example, you can love the backpack rap, you can love the luxury rap, you can love the black power rap, all this sort of stuff. And it's like I think we kind of not us, but in general, I think a lot of people tend to forget that there's a place for all of these things in hip hop, and there's nothing wrong with that balance.
hip hop is to me the most diverse musical genre out. And I think because it's so young, that also helps because like it's still able to be molded in the way that people want it to whatever be. Like with rock and all this other stuff, like I feel like they solidified themselves way earlier than the internet age. So there wasn't really a time where people could just like mold it to how they want to, besides the pioneers of it. But hip hop is so new that all these people were able to take it in different directions. And then the internet just took everything, and now it's just crazy. Um, but yeah, it's too many genres, and or it's too many subgenres of hip hop, and it's too many lanes to listen to the same stuff all the time. And also that kind of goes into the conversation of like people be like, "Oh, it's no good music out right now," and it's like, I promise you, it's not that hard to look.
Here's
Like, it's
I
not.
I'm glad you brought this point up because I have said it before that this particular we are just because you were spoon fed something good doesn't mean you weren't spoon fed. And we're finally in an era where like you have like total liberty of what you want to listen to. You're not really forced to listen to the radio or anything like that. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's not a bad thing. Like that's actually a very good thing. Like for example, you pick what you listen to. Now, granted, and then the whole point of, well, I shouldn't have to search for so and so and so and so. Well, like I once again don't. It's not that like being spoon fed is a very slippery slope because we've seen what being spoon fed does to you when it's good and like when it's bad. Like we were getting spoon fed during the blog era. Yes, we were because people were very easily posting about these things and the music happened to be very, very good. And there was times where we were being spoon fed and that shit is ass. So it's kind of like taking that liberty upon yourself and like it's if some music is ass or something like that, I ain't gotta listen to it. I just go turn on something else. Or if there's some music I find really, really good, like I can go turn it on. Like I ain't forced to listen to none of this. It ain't like this the only option available. So like for example, and then also with social media, that's helped in curating our music taste as well because I've that's how I found out about so many rappers. Like that's how I found out about Mike, which we gonna get to that topic in a second. But that's how I found about Mike. That's how I found about V's, uh, Tony, Tony Snow, Caribou, so on and so forth. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like being spoon fed isn't. We're in the era that we aren't being spoon fed anymore, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Nah, I think the fact that you're at liberty to kind of curate your own taste, I think overall that's a good thing. Like, yeah, it's probably frustrating that, there's not it's I guess you could argue that it's harder to come into contact with music you enjoy, if you're like not an active listener, but I mean, it is what it is. Like if I can go and find something that I enjoy, so it's not a huge deal to me. So it's just like people make these grand statements about the state of the genre, and it's just like, look, man,
If
I'm sure there is something out there for you, and
you can't find,
if it's not, that's cool too. But don't like if you ain't looked into it, then that's fine. But like we don't have to make these grand statements about the state of a genre if you ain't really looking into what's available.
You would never catch me wishing for like older eras of music back. And not that I don't think they're good or not, but like the option of having an option is so much better than not. And you know, like growing up and kind of being forced to like if the music wasn't directly put in your face or like it wasn't niggas from around your area, you probably wouldn't be exposed to that at all. Like it'd be very hard for you to find any way to be exposed to that. And because it's like you grow up in New York, you probably ain't gonna hear a lot of niggas from the West Side. Like you might miss a lot of the big artists from there and vice versa and from down south. And that's kind of why it took so long for the South side of rap to really get to the pedestal they deserve because most people didn't have a way to hear it, and if they did, they were so like locked in on their rap area, they wasn't trying to hear that shit. And now I can listen to a nigga from Atlanta do a song with a nigga from Chicago, produced by a nigga from Cali, and go listen to something else immediately after, and I don't have to worry about it. So it's like the option of having an option is just so much better.
and one other thing I wanted to say was it ain't even the fact that niggas like I I'll say this. I don't I think I don't like it's not that when people say rap is dead, that's one thing, but like I don't get the obsession of wanting a black musical genre to die. I don't get it. Like I've heard people say, "Oh, we need to create something else." Okay, then then what is that going to exactly do besides that's another black art form which I love. I definitely want I want black people to create, but like I think people are very dishonest when talking about the topic of the white people have control over hip hop and everything like that. Well, if you want to be funny and you want to go back and look at who sold them that, it was niggas being selfish and thinking about themselves or being greedy. A specific group of people that's in New York that we talk about, we love so much, so much and everything like that, that are guilty of doing that according or selling ownership of black music. So I don't like this whole thing that people do where they tend to blame the newer generation for not caring about these certain things, which I don't fully agree, I don't fully disagree, but these were people in the 2000s and everything like that that were selling out hip hop. Like if we want to have that conversation. So I don't like blaming young people for everything and then getting mad when they don't fuck with a certain generation, everything like that, or being the scapegoat when it's not entirely their fault to where music has gotten. And if we're talking about negative things,
Another thing is about that is like with people wishing for like we should create something else. Like in a country with capitalism, even if we create something else, the natural progression of it is going to be it's going to be taken over by those in power. And so it's like, even if we create something else, the same thing is going to happen. So it's no point of like shitting on this because of what it's became and thinking that we can make something else and it'll be better, or like just it'll just magically be better because it's new. Like, as long as we live in the society we do, we're prone to the same outcomes.
Yeah, it's like as like we are the tastemakers. Like as much as people say we should, like you said, as much as people say, oh, we should create something else. And by all means, I am all for that. Like both of y'all have said, I don't think there's any difference in opinion there. But because we're the tastemakers, whatever we decide is next is what everyone else is gonna decide. That's the thing to do.
Every time,
Which,
every time.
and that like that's what Don was getting at, because like it leads to the same thing. So it's just like, yeah, maybe you can reset the clock a little bit, but when you kind of end up in the same place.
Like we like black people in America have been the result of so many of trends, like not result, but like the creation of so many trends, the source of so much culture and everything like that. So no matter what, it doesn't matter what new genre comes out or everything like that. Black people gonna be the root of it. Like that's literally how it is. That's not even just with that's not even just with music. Like we talking about music, we talking about streetwear, like we talking about all this stuff. Like it all comes back to black people. And so like nothing gonna change that. That's just it. But moving on to the next topic, I want to talk about one of my favorite rappers out right now. I think he's been on a pretty crazy run since 2020, honestly. I think he's been quite easily one of the best rappers breathing. Um, Mike out of New York. Um, so first I want to say, is Mike another example of how how the importance of social media and how people have kind of cultivated their own little listening group or fan base of that. Because the thing is, like, often people say, yeah, Earl is Mike got his style from Earl when it was actually the other way around. Um, do we? My question is, what's next for Mike? I think he kind of branched out a little bit more with this most recent project. But where not Beware the Monkey. What's the name of the damn project? Burning Desire.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned um the impact of social media on how large an artist's scope can be, because like it like a lot of artists now, especially artists that are not like signed to major labels. Like yes, Mike is an example, the example that we're speaking of right now. But like even on a wider scale, a lot of a lot of artists have cultivated their fan bases through social media. So maybe I don't know if this is the correct wording for this, but is that the new blog era of sorts?
I'm
Like
I'm glad I'm glad you
having
said
to,
this.
because like you draw, like people are drawn to to your music because of it's like, oh, I heard a snippet of this on Instagram or whatever. Like that, I think that that's important because, and I remember the discussion around the double XL freshman list for 2023, and it's just like, oh, I don't know who these people are, but is that not the point of the double XL freshman list?
It's literally
Is the
discovery.
is the point not for you to learn of new artists? Like, and it's just like, where are these artists coming from? It's just like, check your algorithms. They in there. Like that's how it happens now. Like we're in a new era, and that's how artists can reach new audiences. So there's no reason to react shocking to be shocked when you start seeing artists you've never heard of and you start asking where do they come from. It's like, it's because you haven't heard of them. That is what we are here for. We are here to make you hear of them.
That's what I kind of like said before. Like I've said, kind of we like in a very we I ain't gonna say we basically in the blog era, but we're in something similar. Like people are still using the internet is the driving point. The internet is a big source of how people discover music, and with and I put it like this as well. I think I'm not going to say this is the death of the major label, but the dependency of major labels are probably the lowest that they've ever been. Because I don't because the internet is so powerful, and it's kind of like, yeah, why do I need to sign a deal when I can do what I need to do without you? And it's kind of like we seeing that more and more. And then to top it all off, I think the way yeah, I think it's just the lowest it's ever been, honestly. The dependency.
I with the lesser dependency on labels, I think another positive of that is going to be, I don't know, like I don't know if y'all remember when the actors and writers strike was going on. People were talking about how the music industry needs one because all these labels and these music platforms are making so much money off these artists, and like people get 1 million streams and make like $1,000, which is kind of crazy. But with so many people tied to labels, people aren't. It's so much harder to get people together and on the same page to be able to, you know, rise against the powers that be and actually make changes to stuff. But as less and less people have to use these labels and can kind of do their own thing in so many different ways, like people are able to afford their own tours and put out music the way they want to. Like, oh, I can put out this mixtape and I don't have nobody breathing down my back. Or I can put out this album and I don't have to damn go through 50 million hoops to put out this album for them to tell me, nah, it's not your time yet. Like, it's just gonna lead to so much more change, I think. And to go back to Jay's point about the freshman list, I always hate around that time because people are, like he said, people always ask like who these people are, and it's like, yes, that is in fact the point of this. Like you should want to learn something new, and as the internet grows, it's less and less likely you're gonna know who's on the freshman list because it's so many more rappers to pick from now. And like, I can't imagine if Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick came out now, like people's reaction to them being on a freshman list, because it's like people like to look at the past than rose tinted glasses. But if those people came out now, yeah, people are gonna have the same reaction as far as like, who are these niggas? Like, it should have been such and such and such on here. You know, I missed some freshman list like this. Like, it it is recency biases or like the rose tinted glasses about the past is crazy.
Yeah, and speaking of that, like rose tinted glasses, I think people talk about the golden eras a lot, and as great as the music that came out of them, there were also a lot of problems. Like number one, uh, the the abuse in those eras was a lot, and we're kind of just now having stories kind of come out about that. So that's one thing. And then people talk about like how we often talk about now, like producers getting cheated, everything like that. I don't think people like these problems have existed in other past eras before. They are not new problems. So it's kind of like I don't like. I ain't gonna say the revisionism, but I really do not like when people kind of tend to act like certain eras which are perfect with no problems. Like the blog era, for instance. The blog era, there have been people we love the blog era and everything like that, and music came out of it. But I heard so many people, and they're right. So many people saying yes, there were not enough women involved in the blog era, which is very true. Um, et cetera, et cetera. So like all these eras have their own problems, and I don't like acting putting on rose tinted glasses with anything, because it's just unfair. And then
Oh, yeah.
let alone at like that's kind of where I don't like when people say the hip hop is dead thing, because I once again, and this is another thing, people act like there were never trash rappers in any of these other eras. We just live in an era where we have instant access to anything, so we are going to see more. Like you were being spoon fed. The mother like in the 2010s, you were being spoon fed, or like before that, you were being spoon fed because you didn't have the internet. Like the internet wasn't as big a thing, so it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, we got more trash rappers now. No, I don't agree with that. Like the trash rappers back then, you didn't have to hear them because there was no like you weren't that exposure wasn't there because it was very like for example like you wasn't getting in the rap game unless you was like the rite of I agree on this too. The rite of passage now is very very different. There is no real rite of passage. People have the freedom to kind of do what they want versus the other eras. Like you had to quote unquote prove yourself, etc., and all these type of things. And although I think there's things that come with that, though, both positive and negative, people, I think people tend to, yes, I say this, people tend to lie. People be lying like there were not trash rappers. Like, but the thing is, the exposure wasn't as big as it was now, at least in my opinion.
Also, something that I think is important, and it ties into the rose tinted glasses thing because you said that there weren't like people talk about this trash rapper wouldn't have made it back then, and it's just like could it not just be that with time you have forgotten this rapper? Like, could it not be that like you don't like you don't look back and remember artists that didn't have an impact on you? You look back and you remember whose songs went number one. You remember who had the highest rated mixtape on that piff for whatever year. Like you remember those things. You don't remember the rapper that dropped a mixtape that everybody clowned for like 3 weeks and then we never heard from him again. Like, you are not going to remember that rapper as time goes on.
I agree.
Damn, I tried to unmute my mic like 4 times and that shit was not working. But niggas do not remember Troy Ave. I would just like to say that. Niggas do not remember Troy Ave. He was running around and making music for a long time. But no one's gonna remember him in like 15 years. So people gonna be
The
looking
only
at it. They don't remember him now. Like,
people don't. The only time people bring up Troy Ave is when he was dissing niggas, and well, like in terms of the music, like when he was dissing Pro Air and everything like that, and making fun of Steve's death. But also, speaking of that, when people, this is I say this, and y'all know because you give Cole fans an inch, they gonna take a mile. But when people say certain rappers from this era won't be remembered, I think people be lying because number one, we talking about 10-year vets, 10+ year vets, and then number two, like these guys have accolades, so I can't really say that. Like when people say Jermaine won't be remembered, like even Meek Mill, like with Meek, like I am very critical sometimes of him, but I very much disagree that he won't be remembered because he very
look,
much.
I didn't know people were saying about that about him. And you're like, I have my
People
opinion.
say
I
people
have
say
my opinions on Cole, but you cannot talk about the 2010s without Cole. Like, that's impossible. Like, you can't talk about the 2010s without Cole, and then what he's been able to do with Dreamville and all this other stuff. Like, that nigga might not be my favorite rapper, but he has really laid a very solid foundation for a lot of niggas. And like, I mean, I think his influence on underground rappers is kind of understated. Like, there were plenty of niggas that were trying to rap like Cole once Cole got big.
Speaking of J. Cole, I know this isn't like the clearest um path to say this. I just wanted to interject real quick because like it's funny that this is just me speaking personally. I am not as big of a fan of J. Cole now that I was when I was like in high school, which is like peak blog era Cole when he was at the peak of his popularity then. I'm not as big of a fan now as I was then, but he is much better at rapping now than he was then.
I'd argue that I think he's more likable now, man. I think he is genuinely much more likable because he kind of took off that persona. He took off the whole platinum with no features thing, blah blah blah. I don't need you niggas. Meanwhile, like I think I ain't gonna say that. Like I feel like Cole in general was more likable. He was likable when he first came out, and he was likable. He's more likable now than he was during that 2014 to 2018, 19 stretch. At least to
Yeah,
me.
for sure. I think his pen is stronger now. Like I feel like there's like you said, it's almost like there's less of a curtain. Like it felt like he was putting on a little bit. And
There was a curtain,
rap
but
rappers put on. Okay, that's what they do. But like I appreciate the I can appreciate the some of the more straightforward raps. Like I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the raps. I might not be as big a fan of the rapper, but I'm a bigger fan of the raps.
I think that's all I had for this episode. Anybody got any final thoughts or anything like that?
Yeah, real quick. I know we got on this tangent because of Mike. So, um,
Damn.
I I've been listening since like 2018-ish, and I mean, the the discography is solid. It's obviously an acquired taste. If you're into it, you're into it. If you're not, you're not. But if you're into it, it's some gems. It's some
Like,
gems in
bro,
that
I,
backlog.
I started listening to Mike when Tears of Joy came out. And I
Hmm.
think I heard a little bit of War in My Pen, something like that. But like
Hmm.
I didn't become like a big Mike fan until Way of the World came out during the pandemic.
Yeah. I remember when that one dropped because we was all inside. But yeah, that it was yeah. There's some
I would
gems in
just
that backlog. Is like he's one of them artists where like if you listen to a project and you find out that that sound is something you enjoy, you are gonna really enjoy a deep dive.
I would just like to say I think Mike is probably never going to be like a crazy big artist, which is perfectly fine, just
Hmm.
because the type of music he makes. But I think his legacy is going to end up being he's probably going to be like a top 5 underground artist ever. Like very easy. He's on a very crazy project run already, and like I can only imagine what he continues to do. That nigga is incredible. I've said this before, but I think that nigga has the best beat selection out of like any rapper right now.
For sure. For sure.
But that's all I have for this episode. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Um, if you want a topic, if there's a topic you want us to discuss and everything like that, just hit us up. We appreciate y'all. Y'all be easy.